The Silmarillion was the primary, central work of my father's secondary world. One of the chief things that people know about it, I think, is that it was unfinished. But I think this is, in a way, misleading. The real point is that there were several Silmarillions. When he was a very young man, during the First World War, and in the years immediately following, he wrote a work called The Book of Lost Tales, which the little notebooks that he used still exist, little penny notebooks. And some parts of it, he recorded, were written in the trenches under shell fire. And this was the first Silmarillion, although he didn't then call it that. It's quite unlike his later manner of writing, when he adopted a much more remote, exalted even, manner for his mythology. It's more immediate. It's even funny. It's written in an extraordinarily flowery, consciously archaic manner, which I think is very attractive. But there already, often in very early undeveloped forms, are the great stories, the great legends, which were an inspiration to him throughout his life. Above all, the Lay of Beren and Luthien, and the tragedy of Turin Turamba. Another Silmarillion was already in existence by about 1930. And that is very different. It's as I say, it's in a more remote style, and it's more chronicle-like. But the important thing is that was finished. The Book of Lost Tales, you could say, was finished. The 1930 Silmarillion was finished. It's complete. A completely enclosed myth, not presupposing any later ages. And at that stage, The Hobbit had no connection with it. In fact, he said in a letter that he wrote in 1964, he said, by the time The Hobbit appeared in 1937, the Silmarillion was in coherent form. The Hobbit was not intended to have anything to do with it. I had the habit, while my children were still young, of inventing and telling orally, sometimes of writing down, children's stories, in inverted commas, for their private amusement. The Hobbit was intended to be one of them. It had no necessary connection with the mythology, by which he means the Silmarillion, but naturally became attracted towards this dominant construction in my mind, causing the tale to become larger and more heroic as it proceeded. Even so, it could really stand quite apart. And so you see, the famous names of Middle-earth, such as the Misty Mountains, Mirkwood, the great river of Wilderland, they began with The Hobbit and had no necessary association at all with the mythology as it existed at that time. The Lord of the Rings began as the sequel to The Hobbit. But this dominant construction, in my mind, as he says, attracted everything into it. Attracted The Hobbit, and still more, of course, attracted The Lord of the Rings. So The Lord of the Rings becomes, in the most complex fashion, both the sequel to The Hobbit and heavily involved with the Silmarillion.